Welcome back to Grace to Endure. In this video, we're going to be looking at the end of death, where death is going. I am hoping to bring encouragement to those of us that watch the people we love die. Let's remember what death is according to Scripture. It's wages that we have earned. So it's as if sin is a job that we do and death is the payment for the job that we've done. Death is this evil master or overlord. In Romans 5, we find out that death reigns. It actually reigns over people. But it has these two desires. The first one is it actually wants to have victory over us. And number two, it wants to cause us pain. What is the sting of death? And what is the victory of death? How can it sting us? And how can it have victory over us? What is the victory that death wants to have over each one of us? Well, it's separation. Ultimately, the goal would be separation from God for all of eternity. However, thankfully for the believer, that is never going to be a reality. As soon as we die the first death, our soul and spirit is immediately with God. We've looked at that in previous videos and seen that from Scripture itself. However, we do have this temporary separation from our body and our spirit and also from friends and family, and I want to talk about that now. What is the sting of death? Well, it's sin. Of course, we all fall short of the glory of God, so when we die the first death, we stay dead until the first resurrection because we await Jesus literally calling our dead bodies up from the grave. It's amazing to me that the Bible tells us that Jesus will literally call us from the grave and our dead bodies will hear. So our completely decayed ears are going to literally hear him and awake and obey him even in a dead state. That's how powerful our God is. That is an amazing thing. So we await that first resurrection and we depend on Jesus's resurrection power to be able to come back to life, because we cannot do that because we have sin, right? The sting of death is sin. When each of us die, we meet the reality that, yeah, our body and our spirit, it's going to stay separated till Jesus calls us up, because we have corruption caused by our own sin in our body. So it will stay dead until Jesus literally calls us up from the grave. Jesus' body was not like that. He died and then he rose himself from the dead because death had no power over him, because he had zero corruption in his body, zero sin. Okay, so we see here that even though death wants to have the victory and the sting over a Christian, it's only going to temporarily keep us separated from other believers and temporarily keep us separated from our body and never keep us separated from God, because our soul and spirit immediately go to the presence of God and await the first resurrection when God will call us up from the grave. So I hope that this encourages each one of us as Christians. If we have to watch those that we love dying all around us, we have to remind ourselves of this very thing. This separation is temporary. Just keep reminding yourself. It stings and it hurts and it's terrible, but it's temporary. So it's terrible and temporary. Remind yourself of that. Now let's take a closer look at these new bodies that we are going to receive at the first resurrection. Follow along with me in 1 Corinthians 15, 54 through 55. This whole entire passage is very comforting to any who are going through death. So I would encourage you to read it if this is something that you are going through. Follow along with me on the screen. When this corruptible body is clothed with incorruptibility, and this mortal body is clothed with immortality, then the saying that is written will take place. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, death, is your victory? And where, death, is your sting? So let's go back over it. On the day that the first resurrection occurs, we're going to be given bodies that cannot be corrupted with sin anymore. That's what that means. No longer able to sin, because sin is what corrupts our bodies. And then secondly, we learn from this passage that we are going to be given immortal bodies, meaning we will never be able to die. That is such good news. And on this very day, we are going to see this prophecy that was prophesied long ago fulfilled, that death has been swallowed up in victory and no longer has any sting whatsoever on believers. Revelation 20 verse 14 tells us that the end of death is coming. It's at the second resurrection, after all of the dead in sin, those who have died in their sin, believing in their own good works, they are judged at this great white throne of judgment. After they are judged, then we see here that both death and Hades are thrown into the lake of fire. I want to read Revelation chapter 21 verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. Death is one of those former things. And so we have this to look forward to. We have the first resurrection. We have 1,000 years of reigning with Christ. And then we have the second resurrection. That's all the unbelieving. And then they face the great white throne judgment. And then after that, at that point, death and Hades will be no more. There will be no more of this terrible, awful thing that we all dread, which is death itself.